She arrived with a smile like sunshine and promises sweeter than honey. Annelise Moreau, the elegant French director of the NGO Horizon Initiatives, touching down in Ouagadougou to champion the women and children of Burkina Faso. She praised the nation's leader, Ibrahim Traoré, took selfies with villagers, handed out school supplies, and spoke eloquently of partnership and progress. But beneath the designer sunglasses and pronouncements of aid, a darker purpose lurked. Her charity was a cover, her questions too pointed, her encrypted messages flying nightly to unseen handlers. She believed she was deftly playing a game of influence and intelligence. She had no idea the real game master was President Traoré himself, patiently watching, waiting for the perfect moment to pull back the curtain and expose the spy hiding in plain sight. Before this intricate web of deception unravels on a very public stage, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. The confrontation you're about to witness is unforgettable. Annelise Moreau cut an impressive figure as she navigated the bustling streets of Ouagadougou. Early 30s, blonde hair pulled back elegantly, dressed in effortlessly chic attire despite the Sahelian heat, her French accent smooth and reassuring. As director of Horizon Initiatives, her mission, she declared to anyone who would listen, and many did, was simple. Support girls' education, empower women, uplift communities forgotten by circumstance. She was adept at public relations, her appearances on state television frequent and impactful. She lauded President Ibrahim Traoré, praising his youthful dynamism, his commitment to African self-determination. He gives the youth courage to dream, she'd stated in one widely broadcast interview, her smile radiant. She made sure the cameras caught her visiting dusty schools, distributing boxes of books and solar lamps under the grateful gaze of village elders. She posed for countless selfies with market women, laughing easily, creating an image of genuine connection, shared purpose. This isn't about politics, she insisted repeatedly. It's purely about people helping people. But the image, meticulously crafted, was beginning to fray at the edges for those paying close attention. Her actual operational base wasn't in Burkina Faso at all, but hundreds of kilometers away in Dakar, Senegal. Her trips into Burkina Faso, though frequent, were strategically planned, and while her days were filled with public appearances and village tours, her nights were distinctly different. Encrypted phone calls, messages vanishing into the digital ether, quiet meetings with her ever-present but unnamed media officer, a tall, watchful man who rarely spoke. She carried 2 phones, one for public calls and photos, the other a heavily secured device she guarded closely. And then there were the questions. During seemingly casual conversations in rural areas, often near strategic infrastructure, her inquiries would subtly shift. Such a long drive, she might sigh to a local guide. How far is the nearest military base from here, just for reference? Or observing soldiers patrolling a dusty road. Do they change shifts often in these parts? Such dedication. To a technician installing solar panels. Has Burkina Faso received any new drone technology recently? For border security, perhaps? Small anomalies easily dismissed in isolation, but taken together, they painted a picture inconsistent with simple humanitarian work. In one village near the border, an elderly woman watching Annelise charm the children while simultaneously scanning the horizon leaned towards the local chief. "Be wary of that one," the woman whispered, her eyes sharp. Her smile is wide, but her eyes are searching. She's not here to give. She's here to find. The whispers weren't confined to the villages. Within the sand-colored walls of Burkina Faso's intelligence headquarters, Annelise Moreau was already a person of significant interest. Her arrival hadn't gone unnoticed. Routine background checks flagged inconsistencies immediately. The NGO, Horizon Initiatives, while presenting a clean public face, had digital tendrils linking it to a strategic monitoring program, subtly funded through layers of foundations, ultimately tracing back to Western geopolitical interests. Her emails, though encrypted, revealed routing patterns through specific European IP addresses associated with intelligence operations using codenames like Project Sunbird and Sector Gamma. Her travel patterns were scrutinized. Why focus aid distribution almost exclusively in areas adjacent to military training grounds, fuel depots, drone surveillance towers, and key border crossings? The intelligence reports landed quietly on President Ibrahim Traoré's desk. He read them carefully, absorbing the details, the patterns, the implications. His advisors urged caution, perhaps immediate expulsion. But Traoré, young but already a seasoned strategist in the complex game of regional power, opted for a different approach. "No," he instructed his intelligence chief, his voice calm. "Let her continue. Let her feel secure, successful even. The more confident she becomes, the more revealing her actions will be. We watch. We wait. We learn." And so, Annelise Moreau continued her work, oblivious to the invisible net tightening around her. She kept smiling for the cameras, kept giving speeches about empowerment, kept asking her carefully phrased questions, believing her cover was perfect, her mission advancing smoothly. She had no idea her every digital footprint was being mirrored, her every suspicious inquiry logged. She had no idea that her greatest philanthropic donation was poised to be the public exposure of her own lie. Annelise Moreau felt she was making excellent progress. By her third week, her face was recognizable across Burkina Faso. She charmed government ministers, secured radio interviews, and participated in photo ops designed to showcase international cooperation. One particularly effective image showed her surrounded by smiling schoolgirls holding a brightly painted sign, "Africa First, Women Always." It played beautifully back home, securing further funding and bolstering her image as a dedicated humanitarian. But the real work happened between the public appearances. 9 villages visited in just 7 days, a grueling schedule she explained away as dedication. But the map overlay back in intelligence headquarters told a different story. Each village, presented as a site for a new well, a literacy program, a women's health clinic, sat strategically near sensitive infrastructure, military training areas, oil storage facilities, drone watchtowers, border patrol routes. Her inspections weren't about checking on aid delivery, they were about visual confirmation, ground truthing, refining coordinates. One humid night, alone in her upscale Ouagadougou hotel room, the city lights twinkling below, Annelise felt a surge of satisfaction. She opened her encrypted laptop, the screen casting a cool blue glow on her face. She accessed a mapping program, meticulously marking locations across the Burkina Faso landscape with small red circles. Routes between key points were traced, potential vulnerabilities noted. She saved the file under a deliberately innocuous name, BF Field Access V2. These weren't school locations or clinic sites. They represented military supply lines, patrol schedules inferred from observation, potential drone corridors. It was a detailed intelligence assessment disguised as NGO field notes. That same night, confident in her encrypted connection, routed through multiple proxies, she attached the map file to a new message. The recipient was saved only as Victor. The subject line, Project Sunbird Update, Civilian-Friendly Zones Assessed. The brief message confirmed her progress. Best routes exposed. Minimal resistance encountered from local volunteers. Used school visits for successful visual confirmation. Mission continues as planned. She typed the message quickly, reread it once, then hit send. The data packet zipped away, destined for a server traced not to Europe or the US, but to a nondescript office block in Dakar, an office quietly linked to foreign interests under the benign title Regional Development Bureau. Annelise closed the laptop, leaned back, and allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. No alarms triggered, no trace left. She felt secure, invisible. She was wrong. Miles away, within Burkina Faso's cyber intelligence unit, alarms had triggered the moment her specific encryption key was activated. Her laptop wasn't just monitored, it was mirrored. Every keystroke, every file accessed, every packet sent was captured in real time. As soon as she hit send, a duplicate of the encrypted email, along with the decryption key intelligence had already acquired, landed securely on President Ibrahim Traoré's personal communication device. He opened the file, his expression calm, impassive. He studied the map, the red circles confirming troop movements, supply depots, drone ranges, information no legitimate NGO director would possess or disseminate. He read the coded message, the casual mention of using school visits for military reconnaissance particularly galling. He looked at the sender, Annelise Moreau. He looked at the routing, Dakar, foreign interest server. Then he picked up his secure phone. "Let her keep going," he instructed his intelligence chief. "She's just confirmed everything we suspected. Let's see what else she delivers." The very next morning, Annelise held a breakfast meeting with several foreign journalists at a popular Ouagadougou cafe. Dressed in pristine white linen, she spoke passionately about Horizon Initiatives' mission, emphasizing partnership and respect for Burkina Faso's sovereignty. "We are here as guests," she declared earnestly, "to support the incredible resilience and potential of the Burkinabe people." But during the Q&A, a sharp local reporter, known for his probing questions, raised his hand. "Madame Moreau," he began respectfully, "it's been noted that Horizon Initiative's recent projects seem heavily concentrated in areas with significant military presence. Is there a reason for this focus?" Annelise managed a polite laugh, though her eyes flickered momentarily. "Pure coincidence, I assure you," she replied smoothly. "We simply go where the need is greatest, where access allows us to make the most impact." It was a practiced deflection, but the reporter's question lingered. That same afternoon, as Annelise prepared for another village visit, presidential security conducted a routine, pre-announced sweep of her hotel room. Standard procedure for high-profile visitors engaging with government officials. Tucked away inside her luggage, concealed within a meticulously hollowed-out tube of expensive lipstick, they found it. A tiny USB drive. Back at headquarters, the contents were quickly decrypted. High-resolution satellite images of military installations. Known drone flight paths marked with timestamps. Photos of government convoys on remote roads, likely taken covertly. The lipstick tube wasn't just cosmetics, it was spycraft. The time for observation was over. President Traoré could have had her arrested quietly, deported discreetly. But the audacity of her operation, the blatant use of humanitarian aid as a cover for espionage, demanded a different response. He wouldn't just expel her, he would expose her. Later that day, a formal, gilt-edged invitation arrived at Annelise's hotel via presidential courier. "Madame Annelise Moreau," it read, "you are cordially invited by the Office of the President to address the National Conference on African Sovereignty as a distinguished guest of honor." Annelise read the invitation, her heart swelling with pride. A guest of honor. Recognition at the highest level. This was perfect. Proof of her success, validation of her careful work. She immediately accepted, drafting her acceptance speech, imagining the applause, the photos, the enhanced credibility it would lend her operation. She packed her finest African print dress, blissfully unaware she wasn't preparing for an honor. She was preparing for an ambush, walking confidently into the spotlight Traoré had prepared, ready to illuminate her deception for the entire world to see. The National Conference on African Sovereignty was staged with all the pomp and circumstance befitting its theme. Flags of African nations fluttered outside the Grand National Assembly Hall in Ouagadougou. A red carpet stretched invitingly up the main steps. Cameras flashed as delegates arrived. Ministers in flowing robes, academics with thick briefcases, uniformed military attachés, youth leaders brimming with idealism, foreign diplomats maintaining careful neutrality, and dozens of journalists representing local and international media. Inside, the hall buzzed with anticipation. Hundreds gathered beneath ornate chandeliers. At the center of the diplomatic seating area, radiant, sat Annelise Moreau. She had chosen her attire carefully, a brightly patterned African dress, locally sourced, intended to convey solidarity and respect. She smiled warmly at everyone who caught her eye, waved graciously like a visiting dignitary, soaking in the atmosphere of importance. Above the main stage, a large banner proclaimed the conference theme in bold letters: African Sovereignty, Our Voice, Our Future. Annelise felt a thrill of accomplishment. Being here, recognized, celebrated. It was the perfect culmination of her mission's first phase, solidifying her position, her access. She had been asked to participate in the final panel discussion, a prestigious closing session titled, How Foreign Partnerships Empower Africa. She had meticulously prepared her speech, filled with keywords like mutual respect, shared goals, transparency. Partnership, she had written, is built on love, truth, and trust. She reviewed her notes backstage, adjusting her dress, feeling confident, poised. She had no inkling that the very president she planned to praise, the man whose trust she believed she had earned, was orchestrating her public downfall. President Ibrahim Traoré entered the hall quietly, without fanfare, midway through the preceding panel. No announcement marked his arrival. He simply took a seat in the third row, flanked by security personnel, his presence noted by ripples of recognition spreading through the audience. He sat impassively, listening, watching, his gaze occasionally drifting towards the stage, towards Annelise as she chatted amiably with fellow panelists backstage. Annelise noticed him enter. She offered a bright, respectful smile across the room, which he acknowledged with a slight, unreadable nod. It only boosted her confidence. He's here to see me, she thought. He recognizes the importance of Horizon Initiatives. Finally, the moderator announced the closing panel. Annelise's name was called last, introduced with glowing remarks about her organization's contributions. She walked onto the stage, bathed in the warm spotlights, smiling graciously, taking her seat beside esteemed African leaders. The applause was polite but sustained. When it was her turn to speak, she approached the podium with practiced poise. Burkina Faso, she began, her voice clear and carrying through the large hall, amplified by the sound system, is a shining light in the Sahel, a beacon of resilience, of hope. She gestured warmly towards the audience. In my travels for Horizon Initiatives, I have walked its villages, spoken to its remarkable women, seen firsthand the incredible potential, the unwavering spirit. More polite applause. We, the global community, organizations like Horizon Initiatives, she continued, hitting her key themes, are not here to dictate or control. We are here to serve, to empower, to walk alongside you as partners. We are your friends, invested in your success, committed to a future built on shared values. She paused, ready to launch into the core of her speech about trust. But just as she drew breath, President Traoré stood up from his seat in the third row. A hush fell over the hall. All eyes turned towards him. The moderator on stage looked momentarily confused, then stepped back respectfully. Traoré walked slowly, deliberately, down the center aisle towards the front of the hall. He didn't ascend the stage. He stopped directly before it, looking up at Annelise, his expression calm, almost gentle. "Madame Moreau," he said, his voice quiet but carrying clearly in the sudden, intense silence. "You speak eloquently of partnership, of trust." He paused. "Would you trust us, your partners here in Burkina Faso, enough to answer just a few simple questions? Live before this esteemed audience?" Annelise froze behind the podium. A flicker of unease, the first real crack in her composure appeared. Was this part of the program? An impromptu Q&A? She forced a smile, trying to regain control. Of course, Mr. President," she replied, attempting a light laugh that sounded brittle, false. "I would be honored." But the atmosphere in the room had shifted irrevocably. The polite applause had ceased. The smiles had faded from faces in the audience. Every camera lens, dozens of them, zoomed in tightly on her face. And then, on the large screen directly behind her, the screen meant to display speaker portraits and conference logos, a new image appeared, a map, marked with stark red circles. Labeled clearly at the top, BF Field Access V2.PDF. Annelise turned instinctively, her eyes widening in shock, then horror. It was her map, the classified military access routes she had sent just 2 nights before. The air crackled with tension. This conference was no longer a platform for her praise. It was a tribunal, and the reckoning had just begun. The image on the screen behind Annelise Moreau burned into her vision. Her own meticulously crafted map, detailing military positions, supply routes, drone corridors, now displayed for hundreds of delegates, diplomats, and journalists to see. Red circles glowed ominously over strategic locations. Coded annotations she thought clever now looked starkly incriminating. She blinked rapidly, trying to process the impossible. The smile was gone, replaced by a mask of disbelief slowly crumbling into panic. President Traoré stood calmly below the stage, his gaze steady. "Madame Moreau," he repeated softly, his voice amplified throughout the silent hall. "Do you recognize this map?" Annelise swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry. She gripped the sides of the podium, her knuckles white. I'm not sure," she stammered, her voice thin. Where did this image come from? Perhaps it's related to water access planning." The excuse sounded feeble, even to her own ears. Traoré didn't challenge her directly. He simply gestured towards the screen. Another document flashed into view, superimposed over the map. An email. The audience gasped collectively. The sender address was clearly visible. Annelise Moreau at horizoninitiatives.org. The recipient, Victor. The subject line, Project Sunbird Update. Civilian friendly zones assessed. And the body of the message, her own words from 2 nights prior. Best routes exposed. Minimal resistance encountered from local volunteers. Used school visits for successful visual confirmation. Mission continues as planned. Her own words, stark and damning, broadcast for the world. Annelise felt the blood drain from her face. The carefully constructed facade of the compassionate aid worker shattered in an instant. Whispers erupted throughout the hall, quickly turning into angry murmurs. From the back row, a local journalist shot to his feet, his voice ringing with indignation. "She was spying on our military, using schools, using women and children as cover." Annelise's hands flew to her mouth, shaking uncontrollably. "No, it's not what it looks like," she cried, her voice cracking. "That data, it was only for internal reporting, for fundraising purposes." "Fundraising?" President Traoré echoed the word quietly, letting the absurdity hang in the air. He turned, not just addressing Annelise, but the entire assembly, the cameras, the world watching. "We became aware of Madame Moreau's unusual activities shortly after her arrival. We monitored her communications. We cloned her devices." His voice remained calm, factual, but carried the weight of irrefutable proof. Every file she accessed, every message she sent, every location she mapped. We traced her encrypted transmissions from her hotel room directly to an office in Dakar, operating under the guise of the Regional Development Bureau. He paused, letting the implications sink in. "She told us," he continued, his gaze sweeping the room, "that she came here to help our women, to educate our children. Said she used that access, that trust, to gather intelligence, to map our defenses, to identify vulnerabilities." His voice hardened almost imperceptibly. "She did this while holding our children's hands, while smiling into the faces of the very people whose security she sought to undermine." The dam finally broke. Annelise burst into tears, deep racking sobs of humiliation and fear. The carefully maintained composure dissolved completely. She saw not just the evidence displayed behind her, but the reflection of her betrayal in the hundreds of eyes staring up at her, eyes filled with shock, anger, and profound disillusionment. A woman in the audience, one Annelise had visited in her village just days before, stood up, her voice trembling with rage. "You used us! You ate in our homes! You lied to us!" Another woman nearby whispered, her voice choked with tears. "She took pictures with my baby. I trusted her." Annelise dropped the microphone with a clatter, covering her face with her hands. She looked desperately towards President Traoré. "Please," she choked out between sobs. Can we speak privately? Not like this." But Traoré didn't respond. He simply stepped aside. 2 men in plain clothes, moving with quiet efficiency, walked onto the stage from the wings. They didn't touch her immediately. They didn't need to employ force. They simply stood beside her, waiting patiently. Their presence an undeniable signal. The cameras zoomed in tighter, capturing every tear, every shuddering breath. Traoré addressed the stunned audience one last time. "They send different faces now," he stated, his voice resonating with quiet power. "They send kind eyes, clean hands, well-rehearsed speeches, and names that promise hope. But beneath the mask," he paused, his gaze sweeping the hall, "often lie the same old agendas. the same old plans for control. Annelise, flanked by the plainclothes officers, was gently guided towards the stage stairs. She stumbled, head bowed, utterly broken. As she was escorted down the aisle and out of the hall, the audience remained frozen in a stunned, heavy silence. Near the front, a young student activist, someone who had initially been impressed by Annelise's NGO, began to cry, not out of sympathy for Annelise, but out of a sense of deep betrayal. "She said she was one of us," the student whispered to the person next to her, "but she wasn't." And now, thanks to President Traoré's calculated exposure, the entire world knew it too. The mask had been ripped away, revealing the cold reality beneath the humanitarian smile. By sunrise the next day, the footage was inescapable. The image of Annelise Moreau, the celebrated humanitarian, crumbling under the weight of irrefutable evidence on a brightly lit stage in Ouagadougou, played on screens across the globe. Twitter, WhatsApp, TikTok exploded with the clip. Al Jazeera, BBC, major European networks, CNN. Every major news outlet ran the story, the headline variations all pointing to the same shocking conclusion. Traoré exposes foreign operative, masquerading as NGO director. Burkina Faso unmasks spy, posing as aid worker, Horizon Initiatives CEO, caught in espionage scandal. Initial attempts by some Western media outlets and associated NGOs to defend Annelise were quickly overwhelmed by the evidence Traoré had presented. The map, the emails with coded language referencing military movements, the revelation of the Dakar-based server, the discovery of the satellite images on the USB drive hidden in the lipstick tube. The narrative was impossible to spin. Annelise Moreau wasn't a victim of misunderstanding. She was an agent caught red-handed. One French newspaper suggested the evidence might have been taken out of context. A US-based think tank, vaguely affiliated with Horizon Initiatives, claimed the data collection was purely for academic research on regional stability. But the explanations rang hollow. Why the encrypted channels? Why the focus on military sites? Why the deception? No credible answers were offered. The fallout was immediate. Horizon Initiatives announced the suspension of all its activities pending an internal review. Governments whose citizens were implicated in the funding trail issued cautious statements expressing concern and promising cooperation. The incident became a flashpoint in the ongoing debate about neo-colonial influence, the role of NGOs in Africa, and the continent's assertive push for genuine sovereignty. That afternoon, inside the presidential compound in Ouagadougou, a secure line rang. President Ibrahim Traoré answered it himself. The voice on the other end was smooth, diplomatic, belonging to President Diallo of neighboring Senegal, the country where Annelise's operation was based. "Mr. President," Diallo began, his tone carefully neutral, "regarding the unfortunate incident with Madame Moreau, I trust we can handle this delicate matter with the utmost discretion and diplomacy. This woman holds cross-border ties, interests involving mutual partners. Perhaps a quiet resolution." Traoré listened patiently. When Diallo finished, Traoré's reply was calm, but firm, leaving no room for negotiation. "Mr. President," he stated simply, "discretion was forfeited when Madame Moreau chose to use our children's schools as cover for espionage. Diplomacy cannot shield actions that undermine our national security and betray the trust of our people." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "She will face Burkinabe justice, according to our laws, and the world will continue to watch." The line went silent for a moment before Diallo offered a curt acknowledgement and ended the call. Traoré replaced the receiver. The message was sent, not just to Dakar, but to Paris, to Washington, to every capital paying attention. Burkina Faso would defend its sovereignty, expose manipulation, and chart its own course, no matter how subtly the masks of foreign interference were worn. The era of quiet exploitation, disguised as aid, was over. The story of Annelise Moreau and President Traoré serves as a stark reminder that appearances can be dangerously deceptive, and that true sovereignty demands constant vigilance. It highlights the complex dynamics of international aid, espionage, and the ongoing struggle for African nations to control their own destiny, free from external manipulation disguised as benevolence. President Traoré's calculated move wasn't just about exposing one spy, it was a powerful statement about national integrity, the importance of truth, and the refusal to be patronized or exploited. If this intricate story of political maneuvering, public exposure, and the fight for sovereignty captured your attention, please give this video a thumbs up, share it to spark discussion, and subscribe for more compelling narratives that delve into the complexities of our world. Thank you for watching.